Hollywood would have a tough time matching the drama of Norma Bastidas' life.
We're trying to interweave the triathalon with what's happening in human trafficking.
The first woman to run 7 of the planet's most unforgiving ultramarathons on all 7 continents received plenty of recognition for the accomplishment. But the world record holder didn't quite feel complete until she came forward about her own violent past.
And I remember being drugged and beat up and almost murdered when I was 24.
Bastidas was actually trafficked twice, once kidnapped and abused in Mexico City, and several years later lured to Japan by a fake modeling agency.
What I didn't know is just that I was being sold to the highest bidder. Then I get bought by a very prominent person, and I become his property. It was hell. It was hell.
The abuses suffered in her younger years might have broken most people, but it lit a fire inside Bastidas to do things others might think impossible.
The next thing I know, she's on the phone with me going, I want to do something big for human trafficking and to face this in my own life and to make it an anthem for other survivors.
In 2014, Bastidas set out to break the Guinness record for world's longest triathlon. Over the course of several months, she ran, biked, and swam more than 3,700 miles, traveling from Cancun, Mexico to Washington, D.C., following a known route of human trafficking victims.
Norma is one of the fiercest women I've ever met.
Together with the anti-trafficking organization I Empathize, Norma's story is now the subject of a documentary called Be Relentless.
After all of this, from Cancun to Mexico City to DC, she did her final leg all through the night, 24 hours straight, almost 100 miles. And I think what she was trying to tell everyone was that sometimes you have to face new challenges even when you've conquered old ones.
Human trafficking is what happened to you. It's not who you are. Every single time we doubt that a victim has potential, we are saying because of what happened, it's your fault. And that's so wrong. We can prove that we can overcome anything. We're here, we're standing.
And that may be the greatest ending of all. Kyung Wah, CNN, Los Angeles.
You have to forgive me, obviously. It's an incredibly personal story. You know, I met Angela and she asked me to come, you know, and you know, we were talking about grit and determination and perseverance. For somebody who was born, you know, with my upbringing, being born in poverty and, you know, the land of cartels, grit and determination was, you know, just a means of survival. That's all I did for a long, long time, survived. The only way that I could, you know, for lack of better words, not die. You know, being raped at 11, almost murdered twice, once in my hometown and another in Tokyo. You know, that was just simply a way of living. When I moved to Canada, I wanted more for my kids than just surviving. And when, you know, I learned English, had my kids, became a single parent, and lost my job because my son, who was 11, started to lose his sight. Something switched in me. I just didn't want to survive. I just had it. I was just like trying to get from one to another. I just thought, you know, let me do things differently. Instead of surrendering and just kind of living and trying to put meals on the table, it just switched. And that's where the grit and determination came, because I wanted a better life for my kids than just surviving. So I signed for my first marathon, in my first ultramarathon. Within a year and a half, I had broken the record for running an ultramarathon race on every single continent. And it was simply because of that. You know, I just wanted my kids to think bigger, to dream bigger, to not just see me surviving. I just, you know, wanted my son, who was going blind and who's now 23 and a visual artist, to see that anything could possible. And that was not going to happen if he saw me crying at night and giving up on my dreams. So that's, you know, that really became a completely, it was probably the beginning of my awareness. The human trafficking, the world record came to an idea because no matter what I did, and no matter how many languages I speak or how many degrees, I was still seen by those labels. And I was still, every time I proved them wrong, they still continue to put me into this box. Woman, immigrant, survivor, ex-club girl. And that's what drove me to change the perception that I was not those things. I was so much more than people had, thought of me. So, I decided to break the record that I was 20 years old, and learned to swim to break the record with one intention, to teach everybody that it was possible to do it with passion, determination, and the strong desire to just not quit. I mean, I remember training, and nobody wanted to take me. Nobody wanted to take me for swimming because I couldn't even cover 25 yards. And I remember everybody, I already had, running records, but even then, people still told me that I was crazy. And I remember watching your interview, and it was just the most amazing thing, just watching you and how you weren't letting yourself down. People told you what your limits were, and that's where I set out to be. To set out to do was to find my own limits. All I had to do was to cover 50 yards without stopping, and then I found a coach. And it was just a simple act of breaking through small, not thinking on the, I knew that I could do it. And I taught myself many, many things. First of all, I had to break the record in my head, believe that I could do it. That was the biggest, because I remember 26 miles seemed like a lot for somebody who doesn't know how to swim, And at the end, I became so passionate about these, especially because I travel to Mexico and talk to a lot of young victims. And I dedicated the record to them. And I wanted them to see me. And I wanted them to start believing that it was possible. Because for things like that to happen, so many promises had to be broken. By people that care for you, by the authorities, the governments, so many promises had to be broken. And I was not going to break my promise. So that's what kept me every single day. I made it as personal as possible. I really cannot tell you, now it's a way of life. It's impossible, it's amazing. I mean, I look at that and I cannot imagine a time when I couldn't believe in myself. And I don't remember a time when I saw that I had no value. I can't remember that. But that obviously existed for those things to have happened to me. That was the only way that it happened, because I allowed those things to happen only by believing what they told me. So for me, grit, it is understanding that my circumstances are not who I am. I am not those circumstances. Those are where I found myself. Who I was is completely different, and it was up to me. And I mean, I see this as a privilege. When I was training or when I was at the record, and I have had enough. I mean, there was tornadoes, there was endless jellyfish. It was just like all these things. Every single time I've had enough, I remember just closing my eyes and thinking, this is the exact moment where most people quit. Right now, right here. And I am not most people. And just by simply just going that step, then that's all it changed. So I want you to take this with you. It doesn't matter. For me, it was a long journey, sure. But that's my personal story. But that doesn't mean that we cannot accomplish all those things. Just make it personal. For me, yes, the meaning was very, very serious, obviously, being born where I was. But, right now, I just do it because it's fun. I'm nowhere because of where I was. I don't have to do those things. But I just do it because I see it as a privilege. And, living, I just don't want those things that held me back, held me any further. So from now on, I just want to not live a life of nightmares, but a life of dreams. Thank you.